Hello, people of YouTube. As soon as we get a few people on here and I confirm that I'm really live, I'm going to talk about the EPA cuts and about knowing when to spend money on fixing climate change, if it needs to be fixed. All right, it looks like I'm live, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. So I was looking at the news today. People asked me, hey, what about those EPA cuts? Because I've been saying positive things about Trump's persuasion talents and trying to put in context whether he's doing well or poorly in his first 100 days. And people said, what about the EPA cuts? Surely that's bad stuff. So I thought to myself, I don't know enough about this. So I'll go to the major websites. I'll go to Fox News and I'll go to CNN. And I'll get both sides of the story and I'll figure out whether these EPA cuts are the end of the world or no big deal. So I go to Fox and I see EPA head Pruitt saying that the only thing they were changing is getting rid of these regulations that are an overreach. They were an overreach, meaning they were unnecessary regulations or ones that did more harm than good. Now, what's the definition of an overreach? What makes something an overreach? Is that an opinion? Is there any data on this? What parts are an overreach and what parts are legitimate? So overreach doesn't really mean anything. So Fox News was worthless in terms of telling me anything I needed, at least in the article I looked at. And by the way, I didn't see any other links or articles immediately obvious that would give me more information. So I flip over to CNN to see what they have to say about it. And instead of news coverage, they've got an article, their feature article is by Van Jones, famous Trump hater and famous Democrat. I really like Van Jones, by the way, in terms of his communication skills. I think his heart's in the right place, and I think he's a rising star on the left. So I have a generally positive opinion about him as a person and as a talent. But I read his article, and he's talking about the EPA changes as if climate change and pollution are all just one big ball of awfulness. And I understand the argument that if you take the controls off, industry will pollute more and this will have bad effects on people. But again, there was no data. There was no reference to which specific parts got cut or what rules are changing. So there was really no way for somebody like me to look at it and say, what's the truth here? So your news industry has completely failed you. Now, I probably could do a deep dive and find the specific rules, but I'm pretty sure if I looked at them, I wouldn't really know enough to judge, right? I could look at some EPA rules and maybe they look like an overreach to me, and maybe they don't, but I'm not going to really know. I don't have the qualifications. So on the question of the EPA, your news organizations have completely failed you on both sides. You have no useful information for which to have an opinion. But here's another problem with knowing what to do about climate change in particular. Let's say we take for granted, or let's say not for granted, but let's accept it as a truth for our purposes today, that human activity does change the atmosphere in a way that will change the temperature. Now, the bigger question is how much, does it matter? Those are separate questions. But let's just say it's happening. And if you waited long enough and you kept doing everything you're doing, it could make a difference. Some people say it's going to be real soon. Some people say, let's wait a long time. But forget about that for a moment. Just the fact that humans are doing something, it does make a difference. Maybe it's bad. What do you do about it? All right, so I'm going to take you over to another screen here where I've got a description of my problem. So my problem on all this is, and I'm hoping you'll see this, I've got a little graph here, and you can see that my problem is knowing when to spend. Let's say you had decided that climate change is a problem and you wanted to put some money into it. You could spend right away, but if you do, you're going to be down on this end of the curve, you're going to be down here, and probably too soon. And too soon from this specific perspective. The technology is improving every day. All right. So if you look at the technology for cleaning the atmosphere directly, meaning actually sucking the air out of sucking the CO2 directly out of the air, sequestering it, doing something like that, that technology is going to improve a lot in the next 10 years. So the longer you can wait, the better technology you have to deal with it. All right. So there's a little bit of an analogy, and I know analogies are dicey business. I talk about that all the time, but just in the way of explaining the concept, not arguing that it's true, but just as an explanation. If you looked at the year 2000 bug, by waiting until it was almost too late, we probably had more knowledge, more information, better tools, software tools, to go in and automatically find the things that needed to be fixed. So there's always an argument, an economic argument, for waiting as long as you can until you have the best solutions and then go at the problem hard when it's sort of the last hour. So in this context, there's probably some ideal area in which your technology is great and you haven't waited too long. And then there's some area over here where you've just waited too long. It doesn't matter what you've done. Your technology won't help you at all. Now we also have another problem, or maybe it's an opportunity, that China probably is going to have to do something sooner than we do. So if we play chicken with China and say, hey, why don't you go first? Their options at this point, because they've polluted their cities to the point of being almost unlivable, citizens are walking around with masks on, that's not a stable government. All right? If you're choking your citizens with pollution, you've got a stability problem, and China worries about that, right? So the longer we wait, the more China has to do about it, because they're big and they're polluting, and their problem is far more critical than ours. So it could be that they spend the money that we don't have to. You don't know that. There's no guarantee, but it's part of the equation, right? So if you're doing an economic forecast, how in the world do you figure out where you are on this too soon versus too late scale? How would you know? I don't think there's any way to know. And that means that any economic model, which tries to say, what's it look like for the next 10 years, is not going to be just incomplete. It's going to be absurd. It'll just be ridiculous. Because the most important thing, the thing that really is going to make the big difference, is what does technology look like? What does China do? Those are completely unpredictable factors. All right, so that's the problem with making decisions in this stuff. I'm going to switch over to looking at your comments right now and see if my broadcast is actually going through. I didn't put this on Periscope today, but I'll tweet it so the Periscopers can come over and take a look. I've been cautioned, by the way, to keep these short. So I think I'm going to end at 9 minutes. We're a little over 8 minutes. I'm just going to look at your questions. Would running out of petrol solve most of it? Well, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Be careful with this talk. Why don't you wear a lapel so you don't have so much room echo? I actually have my sound canceling panels sitting in front of me. I just ordered them, and they'll go up pretty soon. I might try a lapel. I do that for the Periscope, but you're right, there's a lot of echo in here today. Seems like more than usual. All right, I'm gonna, looks like most of the questions are a little bit off topic, so I'm gonna end here so we've got a clean video on these topics. Thanks for joining me, and I'll talk to you.